you. We need to reconvene our Deschutes County Board of County Commissioners meeting, and it happens to be May 2024. Nicole, would you please care to step to the desk and let us know what we're doing for our third public hearing tonight at 5:30 p.m. Thank you all for being here.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Nicole Mardell. I'm a senior planner with Deschutes County Community Development. And this evening, we're holding our fourth and final public hearing to gather testimony on the Deschutes County 2040 Comprehensive Plan update process. So wanted to note, for those who may not have attended previous public hearings, our project website and the full record is available at www.deschutes.org/2040. And you'll just want to be sure to click on the hearings page. This is a hybrid hearing, so for those of you that are here in person, if you'd like to provide testimony, please fill out a blue sign-up sheet at the side of the room and submit that to staff or the chair to let us know that you would like to testify. And before starting your testimony this evening, just be sure to say your first name, your last name, and your mailing address for the record. And we are having a testimony limitation of 3 minutes per party, just to ensure we have an orderly and efficient hearing. For those that are participating remotely via Zoom, to testify, you must attend using Zoom. So that link is available on the project website. Chair Adair will request that all Zoom participants use the raise hand feature to notify the commission that you would like to speak. You could do that now, or you could do that when we ask for virtual or Zoom testimony as well. To raise your hand, you will click the raise hand button on the side of your screen if you're using a computer, or if you're on your phone, you'll click *9. I wanted to provide a bit of background on the role of the comprehensive plan. So this is a document that all jurisdictions have. It's your aspirational document for planning, growth management, development, and resource protection in the rural county. So for Deschutes County, this is for all areas outside of city limits and on private land. Those are the areas in which we have jurisdiction and planning authority in Deschutes County. So this is a great opportunity to review a variety of topics that relate to planning and development and growth. It's our chance to look at things like housing, our economy, the use of farm and forest land, natural hazards, all as part of this larger aspirational document. The comprehensive plan is largely made up of quite a bit of legal requirements that come from the state. So being in the state of Oregon, we do have a statewide planning program. For instance, the planning program outlines things like what uses can be allowed on farmland, for instance. So a lot of the comprehensive plan does have to show compliance with these statewide regulations. And in the areas where we do have discretion, that's where community input really comes into play. So this document being an overarching expression of our community values, an aspirational document, that's the opportunity for us to, note what we would like to see in terms of the future of the county on some of these key issues and challenges that we'll face over the next 20 years. Also in this document, we have some data and background information and technical analysis from our project consultant, MIG, who we've been working with throughout the process. So what does the comprehensive plan do once it's complete? This serves as, again, that overarching policy framework to guide future decisions on things like zoning code amendments, plan amendment zone change applications. It can guide investments or establishment of new county programs if desired. So it's really, again, a chance to give that overarching guidance for future decision making. We've been working on this project for about 2 years now, and quite a bit of the time we've spent in drafting this document. We released the initial draft in August of 2023, but leading up to that, we conducted quite a bit of community engagement and a lot of outreach activities. So this is just a summary of some of the activities that we had leading up to that draft. When speaking with a lot of community members in Deschutes County, we recognized that there were a wide diversity of opinions on a variety of topics. So the draft that you see in front of you today is really intended to find, on areas where there were a wide range of opinions, sort of a middle ground solution. And otherwise, it was really valuable, I think, just of getting community members' feedback on this wide range of topics. The Planning Commission served as the overarching advisory body for this project. So in 2023, they held 3 public hearings. And through that process, they received 132 written comments with a variety of themes, but some of the major ones here, there was a lot of concern about the potential for a bridge in Southwest Bend near the Bend UGB, concern about rezoning of farmland, concern about protection of wildlife, of dark skies, concern about protection of private property rights. Also a lot of discussion about water planning and management and destination resorts as well. We also received several agency comments during that time. We received some terminology-based edits from U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the Historical Society. The City of Bend submitted a letter expressing support for policies related to regional trails, and Central Oregon Irrigation District provided some pretty extensive comments related to terminology and framing of canal and hydro facility related issues. The Planning Commission ultimately voted unanimously in favor of approving the document, subject to revisions. That summary of the revisions is available at the side of the room. It's attachment A over there, but just a few that they asked me to highlight. The Planning Commission talked pretty extensively about the use of incentives versus regulations, especially in terms of resource protection. So they encouraged the board, where possible, to explore the use of incentives first, prior to exploring regulations. The group also discussed for quite extensively this new policy that would lead to exploring potentially a new zoning category. So in Deschutes County, we have quite a bit of land zoned for exclusive farm use, and we are seeing quite a few rezoning applications to rezone that land to multiple use agricultural, which has a 10-acre minimum. So there was desire from some of our community outreach activities and from the Planning Commission of finding a zone that's maybe in between those two things, where you could have a larger parcel size that allows for limited housing opportunities, but you still might have some of the benefits that come with larger acreage, like open space protection and preservation of some of the high desert natural resources. The Planning Commission also had a few split votes that they wanted me to mention. So there was a policy related to coordination among recreation agencies for trail projects, and the Planning Commission voted to revise that policy to add in coordination among those agencies, also with property owners, especially when there is a trail proposed adjacent to farm and forestry operations, to limit, conflicts between those uses. And the last one, the Planning Commission had discussed the addition of a new policy related to considering impacts to water quality and quantity for destination resorts and other large-scale developments. And the group ultimately voted 3-2 to remove that policy from the document. And there was some concern from those who were in favor of removing it that maybe that wasn't the role of Deschutes County, that maybe that was more the role for Oregon Water Resources Department. And also the group noted that our current regulations for destination resorts are pretty extensive. So the group ultimately voted to remove that. Leading into our board review process, as I mentioned, this is our 4th hearing. So to date, we've received 5 agency comments. I wanted to note that today we received comments from Department of Land Conservation and Development and Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. I believe our Central Oregon Regional Representative is here today and plans to testify, but there was a request for a record extension to keep the written record open until May 22nd, which I think aligns with what the board was planning to do in terms of keeping the record open, but we can discuss that in terms of next steps. And I also wanted to note we did get a revised letter from Central Oregon Builders Association. So just wanted to note that an updated version of that letter intended to replace it has been added to the record. Otherwise, we've received 181 total public comments for the board process and about 313 overall. And many of the topics, similar to the Planning Commission, were focused on water planning and management, rezoning of farmland, wildlife protections, private property right protections. There was a few letters related to concern about a Blackbeat Ranch to Sisters Trail And quite a few of the letters in the record call out specific red lines that folks would like to see. So very detailed kind of changes that folks would like to propose throughout the document. So with that, wanted to note next steps. We'll return to this following the public testimony this evening. But following this hearing, the board has a few options to move forward, and staff is recommending to keep the written record open for 30 days. I should mention that was from our City of Sisters hearing, so continuing kind of what we discussed at that time. So that would be May 30th. And then we were discussing also at the previous hearing that several of the commissioners had specific edits they would like to see. So our goal is to put those comments into the record by May 14th to allow for additional time for community members to review and respond to those if desired. So with that, I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. I think that sounds like what we discussed in Sisters. So good. We're getting clear on our dates. So keeping the record open until the end of the month, I think that's appropriate.
One update for me, I was able to work with Nicole and sat down with Peter also and just went through some edits that I had kind of seen and proposed. So I've got a couple page memo that will be finalized and put in the record for comments that I was working on.
Okay.
And a lot of just little red line edits, and some of it's just editorial opinion too, or not, but format opinion even.
And I'm going to do that on Friday afternoon. I thought I would wait till after tonight's public testimony. So that will be good. Let's see. Can we, any other comments, Commissioner Chang?
Well, I just so everyone knows what I've done so far. I submitted a number of comments early on, which were primarily about background. A lot of the background information in the document I thought was either incomplete or in some cases inaccurate, and so I mostly just wanted the background to be accurate. Since then, just this week, I submitted a guest column to the Bend Bulletin that was printed yesterday, and I'll be planning to submit that in addition as additional comments. So that's more policy perspectives on what I think, where I think the current draft falls short. So those are, I think it's good that I kept the things separate, because the basic background factual information, I think I would hope that people would have a very hard time arguing with the revisions that I suggested, but the policy perspectives, I expect there's going to be a lot of discussion about.
Okay. All right. Well, that'll be in June, I guess. So I believe now do we need to let the people know the rules on Zoom to raise their hand and all that? I mean, is that clear enough?
I believe so. I went over those at the start, but I can give it a
Well, no, we should be okay. Anyone that came into the room late, you need to fill out a blue form if you do want to speak today. And we will have a 3-minute clock on. And where can they see the clock at, Stephen? On the screen. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. William Kuhn has asked to speak first. Yes, you may.
Good evening.
Thanks. Did you give me like 1, 2? Oh, you gave me a whole. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is William Kuhn. That's K-U-H-N. By the way, I'm William John Kuhn, not William Bill Kuhn. My mailing address is Post Office Box 5996, Bend, Oregon 97708. Is there anything else I'm supposed to give?
No, I'm filling out your form, so it's on it.
Yes. One of the most important assets of Deschutes County are our dark skies. They are fantastic. I have a friend that drives down from Seattle. And when he comes to visit, he brings his little telescope. It's not so little, it's pretty big. I've been noticing that the light coming from Bend, for example, has been increasing quite a bit. And I would like to call to your attention that there are a couple of places in Oregon that have dark sky ordinances. One affects the Nature Center down in Sun River, and the other is along Primeville Reservoir. I'd like to suggest one more spot, at least, and that is that you consider it for the winter deer range, the Tumalo winter deer range in particular, but it might be worthwhile in other places. I do feel that it is a worthwhile venture to consider, and I can't imagine why anybody in the winter deer ranges would ever want to make a lot of light. I only know of one person that is that does, and that's a neighbor. But the papers I gave you, the one of the pages was a letter that I wrote to Ed Keith, who at the time was the Deschutes County Forester, and I was asking him whether or not it would be wise to deal with dark sky issues when somebody is shining lights on trees at night, which make them look like they're on fire. Ed said he couldn't do anything about it because there's no ordinance. I think that's foolish. I do think we ought to have some. Do you have any questions? Otherwise, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. Okay, the next person, Angie Brewer and John Jennings. Thank you, Angie.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, commissioners. Nice to see some familiar faces. For the record, Angie Brewer. I'm your Central Oregon Regional Representative from the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development. It's been a while since I've been before you. The reason I'm here is to share with you that we provided a letter earlier today that may be moot at this point since you've already confirmed that you're keeping your record open until the end of the month. So I appreciate that very much. I do want to take the opportunity to share that John Jennings is in the Zoom room if there are any questions for him from a technical perspective. But I also want to just commend your work. This has been a multi-year effort the department's been working on for a long time. Really incredible work to date, and I appreciate all the coordination with DLCD that's gone into it. The reason for our request for the extended record period was just in light of recent comment letters that have come in with specific text amendments proposed for your consideration. We'd like to make sure that those text amendments, if they're considered by the board, are consistent with state law, and some of them appear to have some possible conflicts. So as a service to you all, we want to make sure that we take the time to evaluate those and provide you with guidance in the form of comment.
Kind of technical. So you're referring to comments in the record that could be text amendments? Because this is just the comp plan visionary statements.
Yeah. So there's a comment letter from the April 30th sort of co-authored comment letter from Central Oregon Builders Association and others provide very specific text amendments that we were just made aware of yesterday, and we were taking a look at it and
so words around text amendment. I'm just trying to get clear. I mean, this is the comp plan, and they put something in the record. So a goal or a policy is all we would put in the.
Forgive me, text amendments to the comprehensive plan.
Oh, the text amendments. Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe I was getting clear too.
No, that's okay. You're right. They do.
Editing the words. Okay, got it. That's why I got wrapped up on that one.
No, that makes sense. Apologies for the confusion. I have a minute left and John's on the line. So if there were any questions for him, we'd be very happy to elaborate. But again, appreciate the record being held open until the end of the month.
Thank you. And I do have a question, Nicole, because she's from an agency. Is she allowed any extra time?
You're the chair.
Yeah, I mean, normally you are. So,
Madam Chair, I would say, typically in other processes, we've allotted 10 minutes for agencies. So it's
right. That's what it just popped in. And I thought, gosh, should I be so polite and say, yes, you have some more time if you would like it, 7 more minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. I'm not prepared to elaborate on anything specifically because some of the information is relatively new. But again, just want to make sure that if you guys had questions, knowing that this is your final hearing in this process, that we were available for you.
Okay, great. And it will be open until the end of the month. So
Perfect.
that's excellent.
So we see you, John, on the screen now. So hello, thanks for joining us. I guess my one ask would be so the text amendments, the word edits. But yeah, it'll be obvious that there's a path that somebody's asking for here. So maybe, see if there's ways to propose edits in a more generic fashion for a topic. I guess, we'll see where it all goes.
Sure. Yeah. Understood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate
Well, I'll be very curious to read this letter from COBA.
Mhm.
it. Well, it's also helpful to know that a revised letter came in. So we'll be sure to make sure we're looking at the most current version. Thank you.
Since
Thank you.
there's a
Thank you.
few more minutes, is there anything that John wanted to to share with us? I mean, I don't have any questions since I haven't read the letter that's the subject of this discussion, but
So
would
thank
love
you,
to hear
Chair.
anything.
Chair, dear Commissioner Chang. I don't think so. Angie Brewer did a nice job. That's our message. We like to have some extra time to look and think about, and we're understanding these are not the county's proposals. These are proposals being made to the county. And so I think we're in a good place. And unless there's any questions, I really don't have anything to add.
Great. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, Luis Capozzi.
Thank you. That's me, Louis Capozzi. I live in Bend. I want to start by telling you some things that you already know. Bend has the largest concentration of voters that you are elected to represent in the county. Bend also has a very specific plan to try to reduce sprawl in order to manage the tremendous growth that we've been seeing and expect to continue to see. We need that reduction in sprawl because it helps reduce traffic congestion and it makes housing more affordable for these runaway prices that we're facing in Bend. A plan like the one that you've drafted so far not only does not support that goal, it actively works against it. And so if you don't specifically say that you're not going to convert exclusive farm use land to residential, and instead you're going to let builders build McRanches on 10 acres out here in the county, that works directly against the goals of the city of Bend. The second thing is if you don't specifically ban additional resort development in the county, once again, you're not just not supporting us, you're working directly against us. And all we can conclude from this, Commissioner Adair and Commissioner DeBone, is that you have some enmity toward Bend, and that you're planning to do things to undo the plans that we're trying so hard to implement. So please take another look at this and see if you can't collaborate with the city of Bend and develop a plan that not only doesn't work against us, but that actually supports the goals of the city of Bend. Thank you.
So, Lou, that was pretty rude, really. You're saying that the majority voters in the city of Bend are telling private property owners outside of the city what to do and how to do it on their private property, or else. I mean, that's what I heard you just say.
Well, we'll see you in 26.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Molly Hania, is that correct? Hania. Okay. Thank you so much, Molly.
My name is Molly Honia, 140 Northeast Alpenview Lane in Bend. I am speaking on behalf of Think Wild, which is Central Oregon's Wildlife Rehabilitation and Conservation Center. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my feedback on the Deschutes County 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Think Wild sees firsthand the conflicts that can occur between humans and wildlife when development encroaches on wildlife habitat. This includes animals hit by cars, nests destroyed, pets catching wildlife, and other preventable tragedies. We also know that Deschutes County residents love wildlife and are supportive of policies that proactively protect and support the animals that live there. Deschutes County should plan to proactively protect and restore sensitive wildlife habitat in the coming years. With this in mind, we recommend the following amendments to your comprehensive plan, and I'll submit this in writing also.
Thank you.
Amend policy 5.7.3 to require that new development be compatible with and enhance wildlife habitat instead of relying on voluntary incentives. Amend policy 5.7.4 to require clustering of development in inventoried wildlife areas to reduce impacts to wildlife populations. Amend policy 5.7.5 to require written approval from the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs for any land use application that implicates the tribe's treaty protected rights to co-manage the wildlife resources in the Deschutes Basin. Amend goal 5.8 to prioritize the protection and restoration of wildlife and habitat over their economic and recreational benefits. Amend policy 5.9.1 to require coordination with and written approval from federal and state agencies on strategies to protect federal or state threatened or endangered species and species of concerns for any land use application that implicates those species habitat. And amend policy 5.9.2 to require avoidance or 2-to-1 mitigation of conflicts between large-scale development and sage grouse habitat. We ask that you please consider these updates to ensure that our county's next comprehensive plan more effectively protects our wildlife and their habitats. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Tony Oliver. Tony Oliver next. Thank you, Tony.
You want me to give my address too?
Yes, please.
Tony Oliver. I live at 550 Northwest 74th Street in Redmond. And while I agree with Mr. Capozzi on many issues, I do think he is speaking. I mean, it's the whole county that has the problems that he is describing. So I am reiterating that I would like a moratorium on resorts. Resorts give us a spike in the economy, and then they fall down. And the jobs they provide are service jobs. And heaven knows we have no or very little housing for people who are in the service job industries. So let's have a moratorium on that. I recognize that you guys do not have the opportunity to do water mitigation or water issues, but we know as a county and people that we have water issues, and destination resorts use a lot of waters. I would like to have it very more specific on the ability to change from farmland to develop land, because I think there isn't an understanding that when you take a large piece of property and you put a lot of houses on it, that will use more water than what the farmland was on. It will also require more services like the police, the fire. There would have to be more. As you're bringing in people, then you have a lot more services that you have to have. So also for this is, I like the word incentive, but I would like to have something more specific to say, okay, maybe you can't afford to do your farm any longer, but what are things we can do to help you and assist you to make that farm more productive, which I think is necessary for our county. And I would like to have an zoning program where really intensive, where the entire county is reviewed for zoning and then go over what is allowed in each zones. And you know that I have griped about the fact that I now have a BMX track near my property, and I have a small hobby farm, and the rest of it around there is the same thing. It's all farm. And the person who has that doesn't even live on his 6 acres. But because it's RR10, he has allowed by the county to have sports track. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your listening to me gripe again. And so thank you.
No, thank you very much, Tony. Jean Carlton, please.
Hello, my name is Jean Carlton. Address is 19455 Whitehorn Lane, Bend 97703. We followed my kids here to live in Bend when they needed a babysitter, and we've lived here for 15 years now. For many previous years, I was here every time my dad could drag us. Back when Oregonians said with a sigh, "Oh, Bend is such a great place to live." I need to first acknowledge Commissioner Phil Chang as the inspiration of many of the things that I will talk about. His leadership has been extremely helpful to us. He skillfully and transparently considers the data and the needs of the people of this county and then balances these needs with preserving our fragile environment. And it is fragile for our future. For many years, it did not seem entirely reasonable for the young Deschutes County to actively sell luxury resort space and luxury rural residential development to the highest bidder. The Bend we know, though, is experiencing extensive growing pains, and I think we are all aware that this is a critical stage in our future. On our small ranch, we have seen our irrigation water get cut in half. That doesn't grow much hay. We fear that the well could go dry with increasing pressure, and because we have had neighbor wells go dry, and every plume of smoke evokes raw fear. For all of us, there's ongoing fear of disastrous fires for many months of the year. Construction is around every corner. Too many are unhoused. Do we want our children to have access to water, to see deer, elk, raptors, healthy rivers, and open spaces? And also address adequate housing for the community. Many of us have raised our voices that these are the values we want to uphold. It's clearly time for Bend to leave its adolescent stage and start to do the hard work of balancing the budget. The way to do that is to implement measurable and enforceable policies, not just visions, and actions regarding land use and zoning. When I carefully read the comprehensive plan, I see visions, but very little measurable and concrete action. And unfortunately, it's clear that we cannot trust some of the commissioners to make decisions that are transparent, justified by data, and reflect majority public opinion. They appear instead to be falling into a chronic pattern of pressure from special interests and sell that real estate. The currently proposed comprehensive plan, although it does represent a huge amount of work, does not take adult responsibility for conservation with land use policies. I do have some experience in the field, having done over 20 years of quality planning work. The comprehensive plan does talk a lot about encouraging planning and studies. All good, but some of our commissioners, for instance, are currently disregarding mule deer studies and advice from Oregon Fish and Wildlife. The plan also encourages waiting for direction from the state, and the state tells us that new destination resort development should be restricted within 24 air miles of a city. And yet Chapter 11 talks extensively about resort development. It's not discouraging it. It's not responding to the state. It's not what we need for our future. We know what is good for Deschutes County. We don't need to wait for the state. We would strongly encourage the Planning Commission to not only listen to public feedback, but to undertake real leadership that reflects the reality of drought, fire danger, and the housing crisis in this county. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Roberta Silverman, please. And then I believe it's Gordon Wetzel will be last. Thank you, Roberta.
Well, yes, I'm Roberta Silverman. I live in Bend. I serve as the land use chair for Southern Crossing Neighborhood District, and I'm also the chair of the nonprofit Save Bend Green Space. And the thing that I want to talk about is destination resorts. There are actually already abundant lodging and vacation options for tourists in Deschutes County, from large resorts, hotels, and short-term rentals. And in addition, there are several very large new hotels under development in Bend. Building new destination resorts is at odds with some really existential environmental issues affecting our community, namely preserving the dwindling water supplies and reducing vehicle miles traveled. New destination resorts with golf courses, lakes, and other water requirements are a really irresponsible idea in the current environment and with the drought conditions that we have and the shrinking water table and wells going dry, like you've heard. And workers at the destination resort, as someone already mentioned, are usually low-wage workers, and they can't afford to live near those resorts. So they're going to be on the road, polluting the air even more. So given these negative environmental impacts, we hope that you would consider putting a moratorium on new destination resorts. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta. Gordon Wetzel? If anyone else is in the room and wants to speak, please fill out a blue form.
My name is Gordon Wetzel. I'm been a resident of Bend for 6 years, so I think I'm one of the people that has caused a growth problem here. And I recognize that being here that I really appreciate the natural resources, all the wonderful recreation opportunities we have. But we need to protect those natural resources. And the thing that sticks out to me most in the plan is the destination resorts I think are just not appropriate anymore. I think if 20 years ago, when the county wanted to grow, maybe that was fine, but now it doesn't make sense. Workforce housing for people like me that want to move here is important. It should be contained within an urban growth boundary, and we need to focus on our natural resources. Thank you.
So we've got 3,055 square miles as Deschutes County, bigger than a couple of the East Coast states, bigger than a few states, and we're a small county in the state of Oregon. 20% of the land is privately owned, and we've got 80% that's full on wilderness, grasslands, forest, mountains, and everything. So can you help me with the perspective here? I mean, is it just an idea that, oh, I just don't want those people to do that? Or, I mean, it's 80-20 already, and we're trying to stop the 20?
Well, the natural resources that we need, water in particular, is scarce.
Thoughts on that? So when you drive through Sun River, nobody has a green lawn. Not a lot of people have green lawn on their individual properties. Yes, there's a golf course. Yes, and then there's a big water and sewer processing water plant, and they've been using effluent water back for their golf course. It may be very efficient and less than farming is my point. So I worried that is it fully informed what we're saying here. So. Well, yeah, we can talk afterwards, or
Yes,
you can
let's
testify.
bring that up in
But
a,
I'm just pointing out, it's like we're going down a path, but it seems like there's just a little bit bigger picture here.
okay,
And we do know that groundwater levels in this critical part of the Deschutes Basin, Redmond area, Bend area, have declined a foot a year for the last 25 years. So
Go Commissioner. Got the cheer team here tonight.
Steven?
you wanted to
we have people online.
interrupt
Excuse
somebody's
me.
comments, so I wanted to set the record
Correct
straight.
me.
Yes. Or do we have any raised hands online on Zoom? You don't see any? The two of you? You don't see any? Okay.
Do you want
If
to
you want-
fill out a blue form and come on up and
Yes.
ask some questions? You can fill out the blue form
Yes,
after.
Nicole.
I just wanted to note, so since this is a hybrid hearing, really the microphones only pick up if you're adjacent to the table.
Yeah, so we have
So if you have any comments or questions, if you wouldn't mind just getting the chair's attention and coming up to the table, just so that those who are online can hear those questions or comments as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. So I believe we have one more official commenter. Is there anyone else in the room that wants to say something tonight? You will have an opportunity in order to submit written testimony up to May 30th. So that's a couple weeks.
Thank you for
Thanks.
joining us.
I come to speak and never speak because I
Oh.
don't feel comfortable, but I just have seen California sprawl and I've lived here 40 years and I don't want to discourage people for coming. You know, you can't shut the gate once you're here, but to create this sprawl is really dangerous. I mean, it used to be Bend, Redmond. Now it's almost continuous and that's okay. But do we have the water to cover that? Do we want more tourists here? Which is great, but like everyone says, they're bad jobs. I used to have one and I had to become a nurse because you can't live on those. And I don't know how people can buy houses here. We're creating a really bad process if we don't stop it now. So do you worry about?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, let's talk about it. So you say you don't want to see California sprawl. I don't either. And we're saying no destination resorts. Destination resorts are applied for. They have a conceptual plan. They're very thoughtful about how the density and the flow and the environment. Well, but I don't think of it as a cookie cutter square development pattern of urban sprawl. It generally has a lot of requirements to kind of fit in the environment and flow. So yeah, as I say, I don't envision when you say California sprawl, I understand. I have a vision there. When I think of a destination resort, I think of a very thoughtful development in the Oregon way, not sprawl.
Right.
Well, yeah, so that's a different step. So then waters is different. Yeah.
And the land consumption per unit of housing is pretty high.
Well, yeah, there's lots of aspects of that. So I'm just saying it's a conversation to be had. And
So did you have any other comments you wanted to make?
thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. In the meantime, has anyone else raised their hand? Stephen, no? Okay, we did. Thank you for that. Nicole, do you want to step back up to the bench then? We'll see where we're at.
Yes, thank you, commissioners. So I think now would be the time to discuss next steps unless commissioners have any questions. So as I mentioned, we are recommending that the record be left open until May 30th at 4 p.m. So the oral record would be closed, but we'd keep that written record open. So looking for direction from the board.
That seems appropriate. We did discuss this last Tuesday at Sisters, and it seemed to fit with everyone's schedule. And it will be our responsibility then to get changes in by the 14th at 4 o'clock or 5.
For those changes, we could say 5 p.m.
Okay.
Commissioner changes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And
All right.
and when does that set us up to have deliberations?
That's an excellent question, Commissioner. So due to the volume of the material in the record, I think staff would be recommending that we follow a similar process as we did with the Planning Commission. So during that, we would kick off our deliberations with a kind of a prep meeting. We would still call it deliberations for the agenda, but it, I think, would be an opportunity for us to discuss, which items to include in the matrix, the level of depth of review. So I think we were thinking of late June for that initial meeting, so that we could bring quite a bit of that material for you to discuss, and then we'd return at a subsequent meeting with a matrix, if that sounds amenable to the commission.
Okay. So late June, that would give us several weeks to really go through everything. And then in July.
Yes.
Okay. That seems like a very balanced approach.
Very good.
Okay, so do we need a motion or anything? Are we good with that?
Well, so this, yeah, I'll show support for
Yes.
closing the oral
Somebody close
part
it?
of this hearing
everyone-
and then leaving the written record open till the 30th as discussed.
Okay, so are we good with that? Everyone?
I wish we could start deliberating sooner, but given the volume of public input, I think that makes sense.
Great.
Yes. So I think it's unanimous.
Excellent. If I may, just a few reminders for those who may be listening in or those in the room who may want to provide written testimony into the record. Please do send that to me. My email is nicole.mardell@deschutes.org. As a reminder, we do not accept videos or other multimedia into the record, but we do accept transcripts. We also have a kind of a limitation on our server of 10 megabytes. So if you are, sending large material, you might be able to do that through multiple emails, or you could give me a call and we could walk through that together. But otherwise, again, that deadline is 4 p.m., whether you're delivering it in person or via email on May 30th. Thank you, Commissioner.
So just one more note. I was looking back here and, for the folks that have joined us tonight, remember there was a recommendation from the Planning Commission saying maybe look into a new zoning category, not exclusive farm use, maybe not rural residential, but a high desert housing something. So does that look different than a destination resort? I mean, obviously it's not going to be a destination resort, but you take 40 or 80 acres and you make 10s or 5s and you have a small house and maybe some animals. Is that a high desert housing opportunity that might work? Or is that too much LA sprawl? So my point is just look into that. That'd be interesting to get feedback on that, because I got the message, no destination resorts.
If I was following the proposal from the Planning Commission properly, they weren't talking about 10-acre lots, because that would basically just be there'd be no point in doing something like that because we already have the opportunity to rezone to rural residential 10. So it seemed like the proposal was to do something like one house per 40 acres or something like that in this new high desert zone, which is very, very different than a destination resort.
Yeah, just let's learn about it.
Let's get it clarified. There's a
Well,
big difference.
it's really just an idea that can be matured. So then it's what's everybody's opinion about it. So
Great.
great.
Oh, thank you.
I mean,
All right.
since that was raised, can I just ask the Community Development Department, what would the process be to take that concept and try to create a new zoning category?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can provide some context on the Planning Commission discussion, and then Peter Gutowski might be able to talk a little bit about the process. But the Planning Commission was interested, and the reason why it's worded as explore is because we know that this would be a very time-intensive process with a lot of community engagement necessary to actually look at the parameters of the zone, exactly, I think, what the commission is discussing. But to Commissioner Chang's point, yes, what was preliminarily discussed with the Planning Commission was potentially 40 acres or larger acreage. In the past, Deschutes County has pursued processes to explore a similar type of zoning. That's the non-resource land or non-prime resource lands program. And I think that's my time to turn it over to
Yes, Peter.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, to members of the board. Peter Gutowski, Community Development Director. Nicole is correct that this type of concept would require extensive coordination with the Department of Land Conservation and Development, because it is very rare for a county to develop a new comprehensive plan and new zoning scheme. But from a 30,000-foot perspective, what this board has expressed support for very conceptually is a concept of, we're very mindful of the demands that are being placed on the city of Bend. The city of Bend, in a perfect world, would be able to prepare an urban reserve, which is a designation. Redmond has an urban reserve area. It identifies not only a 20-year land supply, but an additional 30-year land supply. There's been discussion, and I think actually the city of Bend in some of their recent comments has expressed support for this type of zoning designation that would allow for some economic development opportunity for rural residential lands, some of those lands that have been able to demonstrate that they're not farmland, to allow for some concentrated rural residential housing in the form of cluster development that ensures that the rest of the land is available for future urbanization. So this concept would be done in an effort, again, with the support of the Department of Land Conservation and Development to make sure we're not going crosswise, but to try to do everything we can to ensure that Bend's future growth management opportunities, which will really be to the east. That's one concept. The second concept, if I may, Commissioner, is a high desert zone. We've talked about this for several years that would look at redesignations of exclusive farm use zone property where applicants can demonstrate they don't have farmland, they don't have the right soils. They're able to demonstrate that the property cannot be integrated as part of a broader farm operation. The concept would be looking at ways to allow for some economic development opportunity in the future, recognizing that there's not a lot of economic opportunity today, and do it in a way that reflects sustainability, water conservation, impacts to wildlife. So these are big picture concepts. A lot has to be worked out. This would be a multi-year project, but our staff, our Looping County Administrator, when he was in my position and I was the planning manager, we were looking for these kind of win-win opportunities, knowing that our county is growing and knowing that there's tremendous demands that are placed on rural properties. So hopefully that's helpful, but that's how I would conceptualize it. There's a lot to it. And there's that old adage, you have to go slow to start fast, that this would be one of those processes to really talk through and engage the community and advisory committees to ensure that the requisite elements are identified, discussed, and you would build a framework to begin these kind of policy conversations. So that's my overview of what's a possibility, to the extent that there's support for that in the community, support for that from the Board of County Commissioners and our community and our municipalities, and certainly with the Department of Land Conservation and Development.
And Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
the Planning Commission had quite an extensive discussion on this topic, and certain commissioners were asking, should we prescribe more detail in this policy on what this potential new zone looks like? And the group ultimately decided to keep it more open-ended, again, knowing that this will be an iterative process that will require much more extensive community and agency discussion.
Thank you, Nicole. Nick, was there anything you wanted to add tonight?
Thank you.
Okay, just couldn't see if you had any comments over there. Okay, so any other comments for the record? So then we will. You're done, Tony. You have to go to the corner. Anyway, thank you all for coming tonight.
We can talk right now.
Yes, we can talk when we get off of here.
Thank you all so much for coming and engaging in the process.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Peter and Brenda, Stephen. Nicole,